So quite a while back, I cut out these underwear. I did a whole video on how to alter them, etc. Got them cut out, started to sew them, and realized how unhappy I was with how they were put together. But they're cut out. Here they are. And I decided, you know what? The project's ready to go. I'm going to just get over myself, make them up, and I'll tell you what I think. The last underwear video I did, I followed the pattern exactly on how they said to do the elastic, etc. And the elastic was not tight enough, so I will not be doing that for this one. I'm going to do the elastic my method, which will be give us a tighter elastic that's going to fit better. So I'm not going to follow the pattern 100% in construction because the way they do the crotch, etc. is a little bit goofy, so I'm going to change that. But for the most part, I will be following. You can only do these underwear one way, really. I'm just going to stitch down at the top and the bottom the crotch lining so it's not completely open and loose and weird and it'll roll, and I don't want that to happen. So next up, we are going to make Butterick 6031, the underwear, which is view D. So on to the serger. We're going to put these right sides together on this little tiny crotch line right here, and we're going to sew this together. So this is the back and this is the front. You can see the back's bigger than the front, just like our bodies are, and we're just going to sew this teeny tiny little seam here on the serger. If you have a sewing machine, set your sewing machine up for a regular zigzag about 1.5 by 1, something like that. You don't want it to be a great big zigzag. Slide this over, and I'm actually going to flip this over. I always like to sew, when possible, with the top, or the front, I should say, on top. And if you're doing an overlock machine, it's best if you have it to do a 4-thread. I'm doing a 3-thread only because I'm completely out of a white cone. I only have 3 white cones left. I need to order more. So we've sewn our little crotch seam. Looks like that. All right, the next thing we're going to do now, the pattern has you just lay the lining on top of this and then do your side seams. But before I do that, I'm going to push down the seam towards the back, and I'm actually going to stitch it down on my sewing machine. All right, I just turned away for 2 seconds to the sewing machine and stitched that down. I don't have my threads all trimmed up, but this is how it looks. And the reason I did that is to make this seam much flatter. This is, unfortunately, the way they've done it, it is right in a sensitive part of the body. Normally, you would have a seam more back here towards the rear end and up here towards the front. This isn't set up that way, so I wanted to make sure I didn't have issues. So I'm going to make it nice and flat. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to open this back up to the front, or to the inside, and we're going to line up our little crotch piece. So this is how the crotch piece lines up, and there's 2 ways you can do this. Now I personally do not want this open. I find that that tends to roll or gape or pull down. It can get lumpy. It's just not my favorite way of doing it. What a crazy looking little crotch piece this is. Look at that thing. Can you see how big and wide and weird this is at the bottom? So what I'm going to do, you can do this, you could leave it alone and just go on to the next step, but I want this sewn down. So you could take your sewing machine and do a tiny little zigzag and hold that down. You will see it on the front, but it won't be terrible. And do it on the bottom as well, so the front and the back, or top and bottom. Or you could, let me turn it sideways a little bit so you can you see that? Okay, so once it's lined up, you could flip it this way, stitch across and fold down like that, and then this is a finished edge, which is going to look nicer, but it's going to make a little bit more bulk right there. So what I'm going to do, I've been vacillating back and forth, and I think I'm just going to zigzag it. So I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and show you how to set that up. Alright, so we're at the sewing machine. I am setting my machine for a regular zigzag, and it is about 1.2 length and about 4 width. We'll see if I like that. Here we go. Normally I do a tester, but I feel pretty good about this. And what you want to do, and I don't have any pins in this. Let me grab a pin real quick to use for guiding. What you want to do is, I'm going nice and slow. Can you see that when I'm going to sink my needle. So here's the left side of the zigzag. When it zigs over to the right, it is going right on that edge or right off of it. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit for you. Can you see how close that is to that edge? I hope you can. All right, so that's what we're doing. We want to cover that edge with our stitching. And for my sewing machine, it depends on how your needle position is set up. For my sewing machine, if I get this crotch piece kind of centered with the foot, I'm just going to move you slightly so you can see it from this angle. Can you see that? All right, let's see if I can sew around the camera here. Whoops, sorry, I just kicked it. Okay, and this is what it looks like coming out the other side. That's going to hold it down. And we're going to go all the way across. This is the top of the crotch, and we're going to do it at the bottom too. So when I'm finished, I'll show you how that looks. So here it is stitched. This is the inside. Here's the top of the underwear. Here's the bottom. That's kind of what it looks like, and you can see just a little bit of waving. The crotch line didn't fit perfectly in there, I'll be honest. I don't know if that was a cutting error on my part or if that's just the pattern making. And then this is what it looks like on the outside. So you can see a very fine zigzag. There's where I stitched down that center before I put the lining on. And here's the center back. Now that's not going to be noticeable on the body or even once it's washed, but that's how it looks right now. You can see it's still nice and stretchy because we did the zigzag. All right, so now that we've done that, we're going to fold it back around right sides together, and we're going to just line up our side seams like this. And we're going to sew both side seams, and again, I'm doing it at the serger. If you're doing the sewing machine, you would do pretty much the same stitch that I just used for this crotch line, which was a width of 4, so not quite half, and a length of 1.2, around there. Every machine's different, but that's pretty close to what you would use at the sewing machine. We're going to go to the serger and do both side seams. And here they are. Here's one side seam and here's the other. All that's left is elastic, and these underwear will be done. So I'm going to pull out my elastic and show you how we're going to do that. Okay, so here's my dilemma. I like to use this picot-edged elastic, and I have it in 2 widths. This is the wider width, and I use it for the waistband, and this is the narrow width, which I use for the legs. However, we've moved, and I'm missing one container that's full of elastics and laces, etc., that I use for lingerie making. So I have both sizes for black, which I don't want to use on this. I could, but I really don't want to. I can't find any of the white. I only found one size of the blue and one size of the red. So really, when I get ready to do my elastics, I don't have 2 matching colors. I'll just mix my colors. So I can have the wider elastic like I like to use at the waist, and the narrower elastic like I like to use at the leg. So I think that's what I'm going to do. It's going to look a little funky, but it may also look really cute because this is a striped fabric, and both colors actually match it and look fine. So we're going to have blue waist elastic and red leg elastic. So I'm now at the serger, and I'm not cutting my elastic to a specific size. Like normally your pattern will say if you have a 38-inch waist, cut your elastic 36 inches or 35 inches. I'm not doing that. this is what I find to be most often the case. If you do that, once you sew the elastic on, it's completely stretched the same width and it's not doing what it needs to do. Especially elastic like picot. It's really soft, but it's also super stretchy. So what I'm going to do, I'm starting here at a side seam. I never start in the center front. And I'm going to match my straight edge. We want the picot to show. When this is sewn and stitched, it's going to flip over and you're going to have that little picot edge hanging out. So we're going to start, and because of how this goes, this is the back of my underwear, I'm actually going to start here so that the overlap faces the back. Just take the elastic, make sure my needles are up, and we're just lining up with the edge of the fabric, and I'm going to pull tight on this, not like the tightest, but I'm going to pull and really stretch this as I go. It's a little thick. There we go. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that before we pull, we want to make sure that the needles are down in the elastic. So I'm going to take a couple stitches. Okay, the needles are down inside. Just zoom in for a second here so you can see. Can you see that? So the needles are down inside. Zoom back out. So now, see me pulling on my elastic. I'm not cutting anything off the elastic or the underwear, and I'm going to pull. So I'm going to show you how much I pull. This is not pulled. This is just letting it lay flat. This is pulled all the way. I'm going to pull about half, so about like that. And because this resists, you're going to have to hold a little bit at the back, likely. All right, and I may get some skip stitches. This elderly little serger needs serviced, but not happening right now while everything's shut down. So we're going to make our best. So there, I'm going to just let go so you can see. See how stretchy that is and see how much is pulling it in. You can actually see a bit of a gather. I'm going to go back and stitch this again at the sewing machine to make it flat. And now I'm going to have enough elastic stretch for my underwear. All right. And I'm getting ready to come up to a seam here. Hold on, let me get there. Okay, so here's a seam. This is the front of my underwear. This is the back. Seams flow to the back. All right, so we want to make sure the seam faces the back. That's really important. And you do that all the way around the garment. You'll never get a flip seam. Now, I kind of consider this an intermediate technique. Like, this might be hard for a beginner to sew with no pins and pulling and keeping your layers straight, but you're going to get a better result. All right, I'm back around. I'm going to line up my two elastics here. I'm going to pull tight and overlap. All right, so now I've overlapped. I'm going to grab my scissors. Oh, these are not the ones I want, but they're handy. Cut that off there and cut that off there. All right, so here's my elastic. Look how stretchy that is. I'm going to lay these down and show you. Can you see how much that's pulled up that waistline of that underwear? I want to get another pair to compare for you. Okay, so these are the same dimension across the hip. This elastic is, again, the picot elastic. I cut it according to the pattern and sewed it in. It had a 3-inch difference between the elastic and the waist. So by the time it was serged and top stitched, it's completely stretched out. And look at the leg. The leg's actually wider. It's stretched out completely. So that's why I do this method where I pull it tighter. All right, I'm doing the exact same thing for the crotch, for the legs. I'm starting at the crotch seam underneath the legs where you can't see. So that's a perfect place to start and stop a stitch. I've got my needles sunk in the elastic so that when I pull, it doesn't snap out. All right, so I'm holding the camera. I'm going to put it back on the tripod and stitch this next. Switch the camera sides to see if that helps for you to see what I'm doing. So you can see that I've got the fabric right with the edge of the knife, and I'm pulling my elastic as I go, keeping it right on the edge. The thing, when you're stitching this, can you see? The stitch width, the narrow elastic is almost perfect, so that when we flip it over, there's our little picot edge. I'm wishing I had a third color of elastic, like maybe this mustard color, or even the white. It would be kind of fun to have the each leg a different color and the waist a different color. I think that'd be actually kind of cute on this stripe. But I don't have mustard. I don't know if they make it or not. If you want picot edged elastic, I get it from SoSassyFabrics.com, and I'll put a link in the description below for you. All right, I just came around. I'm going to trim my threads away from the machine, and then I'm going to trim off the excess. So there's my overlap, and that's how it's going to look when it's stitched. This is my nice stretchy leg. Super cute. Okay, I'm going to do the other leg and then to the sewing machine. All right, here's the undies. Here's the undies, serged but not stitched yet, so you can see how much that's pulled it up. So the next step for me is to just fold over and put a few pins in it to hold it. This, because the stitching is as wide as I want it to be, you can see the picot's perfect. So this one's the easy one on the leg. On the waist, the stitching isn't as wide, and if I turn it and go flat, I have more showing that I don't want. So I'm actually going to pin this so that it meets. All right, grab my pins. So I'm going to stretch it, line that up so that the fold where I've got a little bit of fold is right next to the picot. Put a pin in it so that when I go to sew it, it holds it in place. So we're just going to go around, put a few pins in like that. At the waist, I'm not even going to worry about it at the leg. And then we're going to go set up our sewing machine. For the top stitching of the elastic on the sewing machine, you can either use a double needle, which I don't have any of, so I'm not going to show that technique today. I'm just going to show the triple zigzag, and you can see this is what it looks like. I did this in the other underwear video that I have linked down below, and I think there's an iCard at the beginning of this video for it. So this is the triple zigzag, and I'm doing it kind of wide. I'm actually going to narrow it just slightly at 6.1. Whoops, wrong one. 6.1. I want to go, I don't know, like 5, 7, probably something like that. And that's probably about right. 4 in length. And the triple zigzag, what it does, I'm just going to show you on this pair that's done, even though the elastic isn't right. See, look, there's just no stretch because of how they did it. But this is what it looks like. And when it's done properly, which you're getting ready to see, it gives a lovely gather to the elastic edge and looks very pretty, neat and even. And it's comfortable. It keeps your stretch for your elastic. It's just a great stitch for this sort of thing. You can use it for swimwear, underwear, active wear. So that's what we're going to use. We're starting here at the leg in the crotch underneath where you can't see your overlapping of your stitches. And there's going to be very little stretch in the crotch right at this seam because there's just so many layers right there. When Whenever you stop, sink your needle. That keeps you from accidentally pulling your fabric away and messing up your stitch. Just going to make sure my layers are laid up right. Sink my needle. Straighten my fabric. Pull this around so you can see. That's how it looks. Nice and stretchy. Isn't that pretty? It always looks pretty. And I actually have gathers in the leg. It's actually gathering up like I want. Okay, just going to keep doing this for both legs. It's a circle, so you're going to go around and catch your stitches on the other side. Okay, I've gone all the way around. I'm going to give it a haircut real quick. Get rid of all these extra threads, and there it is, pretty thread heavy on the inside, but you won't notice it when wearing it. And then pull this out. So this is what the stitch looks like. Look at how nice and even that looks, and then you can see the little picot edge, and it's nice and stretchy. So there's one little leg. I'm holding it tight to stretch it, but you can see gathers up nicely. So I'm going to do the next leg, and then we'll do the waist. I'm all pinned at the waist. You can see it kind of pulls down between the pins, but I'm going to be stretching as I go, so it'll be fine. And then I, again, don't want to start in the center front. I actually like to kind of start where I started and stop my elastic. So I'm going to look in the inside here. Here's my overlap. So this is where I'm going to start my top stitching. Just like this. And what I want to make sure is that I can see my picot edge just peeking out. Sink my needle. There we go. Threads under the foot, sink the needle. Okay. And now I'm going to hold in the back so I don't pull it forward too much as I stretch from the front. And I'm doing exactly like we did on the leg. The waist is a little harder because I have pins in it. I didn't bother pinning the leg. And the stitching line is farther down, so I want to make sure that I get my fold in the right place. The previous stitching line, I should say. So now we're just going to go around the circle. Pulling out pins, start, stop, all the way around. I'll show you at the end. I'm all the way around, giving it a haircut. And, whoops, there's some more little threads. I don't know why I'm using those scissors, just because they're handy, I guess. Here's the waist. I see one spot right here. Can you see where my fabric went up just a little bit? It kind of messed up my pretty picot edge. But for the most part, we're good. And that happens to be in the back. This is the front. So hooray for that. And I'm going to show you, when making delicates, underwear, things like that, these are just little ribbon bows. Let me open it up real quick. Here's a little bow. Isn't that cute? I'm gonna make that a little easier for you to see maybe. And these are perfect little things for the fronts of undies. When you make underwear or some other things like this, sometimes it's a little hard to tell the front from the back, pajama bottoms. So if you want to, you can get a little package of something like that and just sew one in the center front or the center back, whichever you prefer. I would definitely do front if it were me. But just a couple little stitches to hold that on, and it makes it easy for you to tell the front of your undies. All right, I'm going to lay these out and show you my finished project. And here's the finished project. So, cute undies when finished. Here's what the inside looks like, just so you can kind of see all the layers. I went ahead and sewed the little bow on the front. There's the leg. So I'm going to compare this to the other pair of underwear that I already have up. I kind of prefer the pattern. Look at how big those look because they're completely flat. I think I really love this fabric. It's really a nice fabric. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to revisit this project. So you can look for an update on these undies coming soon, and I'm going to compare these two. So these started out, look, they're the same width across. These are the same across. This is a low rise, this stripy one. But look at the difference when you do the elastic right. Look at how much more that pulls up and gathers. This is going to feel better on the body. This one's just going to slide off your body. This, especially look at that big old leg. So definitely don't love the way this pattern is put together. However, the way I've sewn it, I think it's actually going to be completely comfortable. This was my biggest issue, how there was a seam right in the center under your body. But now that I have sewn it flat and I have this over it, please ignore all my hairs, needs a haircut. Underneath, that looks pretty messy, I'm just going to say. But you won't notice it on the body and it'll feel fine. It's completely flat on the inside. So that would be comfortable. Cute from the outside. I really like the colored picot with this. I don't mind that even that they're two different colors. It's underwear and not many people are going to be seeing that. It's under our clothes. So finished undies, and we're going to revisit this project, this one. We're going to fix this one coming up.